Oh, hey, Chris.
Hey Chuck, how are you?
I'm doing really well because we have a very special guest.
This is great. I'm excited. This is not a normal time for us to record. Somehow we made this work, and I'm super excited for our special guest.
We are in prime time. It is 6 p.m. Central on a Tuesday night, and we have Jen Barna with us, who is the host and I think the creator of the DocWorking Podcast. And we're going to hopefully open our audience's eyes to this podcast because as I have been reading about it and listening to some episodes, it's really, really great.
Well, it certainly hits on topics that are relevant to everybody, whether you're a doc or a therapist or somebody in training, because it very much gets to I guess, the generational note or the vibe of what's going on now. So I think it's going to be great to have Jen on, and I'm looking forward to learning as well.
Absolutely. So Jen, welcome. And at the risk of sounding rude, I would love for you to sort of introduce yourself. You are a physician, so just talk to us a little about your pathway, and then of course we want to figure out and want you to help us understand the whole podcast.
Well, thank you so much, Chuck and Chris, for inviting me to be here with you. It's really an honor and a privilege to be here talking with you, and I'm looking forward to a fun conversation. I am one of the co-hosts of DocWorking, the Whole Physician Podcast. I co-host the podcast now with Master Certified Coach Jill Farmer, who is also our lead coach at DocWorking, which is my company that focuses on providing coaching with a combination of peer support and other tools to help people throughout their lives as physicians to balance work and life and to really lead to their own definition of success. And we initially started the podcast with a third co-host, Gabriella Dennery, also a physician and coach, a tremendous co-host on the podcast who has gone on to live what she explains to her clients that she would like to see them do, which is to pursue one of her side passions, which is music. So Gabriella is one of our coaches at DocWorking still, but has decided to step away from the podcast. But Jill and I have thoroughly enjoyed bringing on tremendous guests, and really the whole idea for the podcast came from the time when I was starting DocWorking and bringing this coaching team together, a team of experienced coaches who have been working with physicians for years and really understood how to help us to reframe and arm ourselves with the tools to put ourselves back in the driver's seat of our own lives. I was learning so much from them that I wanted to bring that to other physicians, and that's really how I brought them together. And then we spent about a year just determining how to take what they've learned and make it into programs. And so when we were doing that, we decided, well, let's start a podcast and let's start bringing some guests on, and let's just hear physicians talk about their lives. And some of the ones who are out there doing interesting things, they have, really interesting hobbies. They are, entrepreneurs who are leaders in the field, or maybe they're out there, working in the trenches, and they have figured out a way to balance their own personal, lives with medicine. So it's been such a fabulous journey so far.
So take us, if you don't mind, let's back up a little bit. Take us to, I don't know, residency, and talk to us about what kind of physician you are and when you thought you were going to do this business, because you're still a practicing physician, as I understand it, and just how that whole thing transpired.
Well, for me, actually, I think it started in medical school when my children were born. Both of my kids were born when I was a medical student, which back at that time was almost unheard of. And so for me, the struggle all the way through residency and practicing was trying to figure out how to have what I felt was enough time with my family, and also be an equal partner and, be good at what I do and highly respected by my team. And that always wanting to be 100% in both and 100% of my time in both. And there's no way to do that. So it was always a struggle. And I spent a lot of many years trying to figure it out for myself, and figured out a number of things for myself over those years, got the career, got the schedule improved and gradually kind of worked that out. But what I realized when I started working with coaches was that there are ways, there are tools that we can learn that I wasn't even aware existed, that for me really made a huge shift in the way that I saw my work, and made me realize how many more options I had, and really made me redefine a lot of things that I had let other people define for me up until then. So it was such a mind-shifting experience that that I think it was a long trajectory for me, and it made me realize other people could get this could get this so much earlier, and it could make a huge difference in their lives and their careers.
So I am super, super impressed with how you took this from concept and turned it into programs. And I think that hearing you speak, you are clearly very passionate about it, and you've gone through a big journey yourself. So for those who are uninitiated to the DocWorking platform, say if you're either somebody in training, and then for the second part of it, somebody who is a practicing, surgeon or therapist, can you give me one episode each that those groups should download of your podcast and be like, hey, this is like where you start. This is the gateway to making this your second favorite podcast behind the upper hand.
Oh wow, there are so many. We're coming up on our 200th episode here in the next few days, and in fact, next week we have an episode coming up with Dr. Bill Sears. I don't know if you guys remember. If you have kids, you may have heard of him. He's a pediatrician who's written a lot of books about parenting, and so I'm really excited to have that episode go live. We had a phenomenal resident recently on the podcast. His name is Russell Ledette. He is a resident who is finishing up in Louisiana and moving. I believe he just recently moved to Indiana to start the next leg of his training, and just has an incredible story. There are a number of coaches who we've had on the podcast over time. One that you guys know, Rick Nemanek, has been on the podcast with our lead coach, Jill Farmer, and he had a tremendous episode just talking about, he's a very well-known leadership expert. We just recently have had an expert at the front of his field who is on the leading edge of pain treatment. Dr. Howard Schubner, just talking about emotional awareness and expression therapy and pain reprocessing therapy, which I think a lot of us as physicians are maybe not even aware of. This whole new way of treating pain that's starting to see really tremendous results, significantly better than cognitive behavioral therapy. So just it's a broad spectrum of guests, and we've had a medical student coming up in a few weeks. We have the youngest medical student I've ever known of coming onto the podcast. You may have seen her in the news, Elena Annalee. She is, I believe, she's a young teenager. I want to say, I think she may be 13 or 14 years old, about to start medical school. So it's a broad range of guests that we have. And we really try to talk with people about their lives outside of medicine. We've had a number of surgeons come on who've talked about their experience going through burnout, and how their careers have taken a sharp turn, and then what happened after that, and hearing their stories has been really, really tremendous.
Yeah, I bet. So I have a lot. First, I think I'll make you guys laugh a little bit. I want to after I tell my little anecdote, I would love to just hear your opinions on coaching in general. But yes, Monday I was at the OC, and they have recently, the OC is one of our offices, and they've started a new policy where, not policy, they've started a new practice where they bring in an emotional support dog. And just to, like, whoever wants to go hug the dog, go hug the dog. And I kid you not, I'm a dog lover. Obviously, it requires a dog lover to truly appreciate this. I spent 2 minutes with the dog, who was climbing in my lap and, licking my face, and I was totally rejuvenated. It was the most awesome thing ever. So I'm like pushing for this to happen all the time. But in all seriousness, what is interesting, what's happening at Washington University, which is, for many years, and I feel very comfortable in saying, when I was a resident, coaches were, in a surgical field, a sign of weakness, and you wouldn't talk about it. And I don't know if anybody had a coach, that long ago. And now all the chairs, every single chair of the departments has a coach, and many other people have a coach. And it is absolutely seen as a sign of someone who wants to improve themselves, not a sign of weakness or issues or anything like that. So the timing of at least for me, the timing of your podcast and your many, many episodes are really, really resonate. So who should have a coach, Jen?
Well, I love that you bring up a number of things that I would love to touch on. First of all, to your point, every person on the planet could benefit from having a coach, and I especially feel that every physician could benefit from having a coach. As healthcare professionals, we're in a high stress environment, and we can already see, as you point out, from other sectors, that coaching has become normal. It's normal to see business executives have coaches and succeed further, with coaching. Actors have coaches, athletes have coaches, and physicians and other healthcare providers deserve coaching as a normal part of their professional and personal development. So to me, that's really a big mission of DocWorking. Is what we did is try to bring together programs that were accessible to large numbers of people. Our programs last a year because we want the coaching to be ongoing, because these tools that you can learn that can really make a difference in your life, I mean, it takes a while to process these. And when you've never heard of these things, the first time you hear of it, you process it on one level, and then as you revisit it over time, you understand it differently, and it applies to your life differently, and your goals change. So, you change, and your understanding of these concepts evolves. So it really should be something that is ongoing. And I think you bring up a great point with the dog, because we see, we've been traveling around, going to a lot of conferences about physician and healthcare burnout, and a number of the healthcare systems that are coming forward and talking about what they're doing so far, recognizing that they need to be doing something to help address burnout. Some of the things they're doing are very pointed, like they're very specific. They last a certain amount of time. They're bringing people in to have a lunch and learn or a weekend workshop. And that's all great, but the long-term change can't happen unless there are long-term resources available that are really integrated into people's professional schedules, which I know is really a culture shift for us in medicine. The concept that we could, but what we're saying is that even if you spend 10 minutes of focus time a week, you can make progress, especially if you're looking to the long term. And then when you incorporate peer support with that, it can make a big difference.
So somebody who has been coach curious for quite some time, and I don't know much about it, what logistically or nuts and bolts does having a coach entail? What does that look like? How many meetings do you have? How often do you meet? What exactly do you talk about when you're getting started? Just because I don't know how to wrap my head around what that process is.
Yeah, it's really customizable. And of course, there are a lot of coaches out there. So I think it's important for people to find who really fits for them. What we've done is we have a whole program where people come in and they get a foundational course, which is a digital course, but our coaches are on the platform inside the course. And so are the other people who are in our community. And so you can interact as you're taking the course, and you can discuss concepts with the coaches. You can discuss anything with the peers that are there. And we've created what we call a doctor's lounge. We have a PA and nurse practitioners lounge, and then we have a care team lounge, because people in these different groups do have some different pain points, and it's helpful to be able to realize that you're not the only one having these pain points. In fact, I think that's another big problem for physicians, is we tend to work in a bit of a silo. We at least often don't talk about our own vulnerabilities when we're at work. We talk about our patients, we try to solve problems for patients, and we don't really make time in our day to actually just have normal conversations around the water cooler, or, as the old fashioned term would be. So being in a place where you feel safe, where you can talk with your peers about, struggles that you have, and realize that you're not alone in those struggles, that can be really helpful to combat isolation, which is another, factor leading to burnout.
Are there, I have a lot of thoughts, flying through my head, but I've always thought about the process of having a coach. And for me, I'm sure I could use one in many domains, but I've always thought I would want a coach who could give me career advice, help me talk through, what my career looks like today, what I want it to look like tomorrow. Do you need a coach with certain expertise? Obviously, you want a coach that you can have a great relationship with, but I assume there's different expertise or different focus for different coaches. Is that fair?
That is fair. And actually combining your question with Chris's, which I realized I answered incompletely, because in addition to the coaching on the platform, there's small group coaching that meets once a month. And that gives people a chance to actually have coaching in the context with a small group. And you're learning from each other as well as from the coaches. And then there is an option for one-on-one coaching, depending on what type of program you want to have. And you could have those sessions weekly, monthly. It really is up to the individual and what works for their schedule. So to answer your question, Chuck, I think that really what is an important thing to look for in a coach is someone who has experience coaching other people in a similar type of career. And so it's my impression, and I'm not a coach, I'm just basically a recruiter of really amazing coaches. So I'm still, learning every day from them. But my impression is that when you have a coach who's experienced working with physicians and surgeons and has coached them to achieve what they each individually are wanting to achieve, that's a coach who knows how to get you into a position to figure out what it is you want and to accelerate your path to get there. So they're not really doing the work in a way. I mean, they're really just guiding you and helping you to maybe see things from a different perspective, or brainstorm things, or really just to be your trusted thinking partner.
That makes total sense. I was, as you were talking, I was thinking about the parallel burnout issue, and how I've done a few things recently that I feel are really helpful for me. And I'm by no means a coach or qualified to be one. But the things that I do, and I'd be interested, Chris, and actually, Jen, for you to say, if you're comfortable saying what personally you do. I think one of the best things I do is every Tuesday I operate with another surgeon. And I know, Chris, you have that opportunity. And that kind of, as you said, we tend to work in silos, and collaboration is unbelievably just great. I'm on a board of a medically related company, and there was a board meeting last Tuesday, and I was going to just join by Zoom, and I thought that will be terrible. So I kind of had to figure out a way to get there. I got there, and being in person with a group, not doing my day to day, felt really good as well. And those are two of the things that just have resonated with me recently. But Chris, I know you do different things to fight burnout. Like, I can probably name them all, but I'll let you name them.
Well, you took one of mine, which is collaborating with partners, both in research and in clinical care. So, even though I spend 12, 14 hours sometimes reconstructing a brachial plexus with David Brogan, both of us look at each other at the end and we say, that was really fun. This is why we do it. And then especially when the patients come back and, things have worked out the way we want them to, it's just the best feeling. So, and then also seeing successes and, trials and tribulations with research with a partner is so much better. And, just aside from professional parts of it, I have found it very important to establish a regular exercise routine, and have since being Chuck's fellow. He was very, very hard on me, among others were, but no.
Oh, come on.
In all seriousness, I found that to be particularly important in training. And that's one of the things I talk to about the residents and fellows that work with me about taking care of themselves. So for example, I had a resident recently who was working with me, and we were talking about things like sleep and exercise and time with partners and family and friends, and all those things really reinvigorate you and make you a better person at work as well. So I've found a little bit the hard way what works for me, and have just become fanatical about it.
And cooking, don't forget cooking.
I was going to stop shy of that, but I have inherited my mom's love language of showing affection for people by cooking for them. And I do enjoy that activity whenever we can do it. So that's been since the pandemic, since I was super bored at the beginning of the pandemic and all I could do was cook.
All right, Jen, tell us a couple of things you do.
That's so cool. I love hearing that. All of the things that you guys mentioned are so important. For me, exercise has been something that I've really had to build in, and relationships at work are somewhat difficult. I'm a radiologist, so I really can't collaborate with someone on cases as I'm interpreting them, and so it can be a little bit isolating. But the team itself, I tend to work alone as a radiologist, but with a team of other, with techs and nurses, not so much with other radiologists, because my group is a bit scattered. And so building relationships and rapport with my team has been really helpful over the years. And I really enjoy working with them and knowing what they're doing outside of work. And then as far as personally, the thing that I've found that has been really interesting working with coaches is there are so many ways to sort of dive in deeper, with mindfulness and learning how to process stress, and ways to strengthen resilience. I think we wouldn't be where we are if we weren't already resilient as healthcare workers. We're more resilient than the average population, but resilience is kind of like a muscle as well. And it's not static. It's something that we can benefit from learning how to strengthen that. And I think, the key is just that for me, it's relationships and being with people that I really care about as much as possible, and finding ways to have the flexibility to do that. And every person is different. And so putting yourself in a position where you can try to define what matters most to you, and really think about that and give that some thought, so that when you're making decisions, you're actually making those decisions based on your knowledge of what matters most to you, which is helpful to set boundaries, which I think can be a challenge for us as physicians as well. At least I guess I'm speaking from personal experience, but having been through some jobs early in my career where I didn't know how to draw the line and and not accept a ridiculous workload. I think learning how to draw boundaries is helpful at work and outside of work. So there are so many nuances to preventing burnout. But really, the key is to, I think, define success for yourself, and then as you move along the path toward that, the side effect is preventing burnout.
So that actually leads into the question I wanted to ask you as we kind of wind things down. Can you give any of our listeners some kind of exercise or question to answer for themselves when they try to define what success is for themselves? Because I think for me, that was and is an important part of finding my compass.
Yeah, I do think that figuring out what success means to you is a more complex question than it initially sounds like it is to me, at least from my perspective. It has been, and I think the question to ask yourself is, first of all, how you define success for yourself, and secondly, to tease out from your definition, how much of that is being superimposed by the culture you grew up in, other people who are influential in your life, and really begin to narrow down what is actually success to you and what actually matters to you, as opposed to what you've learned is success and matters.
Yeah, that's great. And it's hard in academics because, you know, the residents come through and they see our lives, and maybe some of them think we are successful, you know, but our success, I love that. I mean, success is very individual. And I always tell residents and fellows when they're looking for jobs, you know, it is you know, you have to be honest with yourself first, before you can you know, go out there and find the right job for you that'll make you happy and lead to a happy life. So, well, Jen, I am so grateful for your joining us, and I'm so grateful for Rick for, you know, making me aware of your podcast, because I had no idea. And like I said, I've listened to a handful and will continue to listen. And I need this. I know Chris needs this. um, but we are really grateful for your joining us, and this was super fun.
Thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Look forward to talking with you again.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Jen.
All right.